Elias' crown stopped in the hallway when the humming reached him, low, steady, like a lullaby wrapped around a prayer. It wasn't from the kitchen. It was from Noah's playroom, the one door everyone treated like a hospital room. He moved closer, careful, like the sound might break if he breathed too loud. His hand hovered near the wall keypad, ready to trigger the silent alarm. Through the crack, he saw Maribel Knox sitting cross-legged on the rug. Her uniform was crisp, her hair wrapped neat, her hands gentle. Noah sat across from her, legs folded, face tilted toward her voice. His eyes didn't focus, but his whole body listened. Maribel tapped a rhythm. Tap, tap, pause, tap. Noah lifted his fingers and copied her. Then she slid her palm under his hands and traced shapes on his skin. Noah's lips parted like he was reading. Elias's chest tightened. Therapists had spent years trying to make Noah function. They'd never once sat on the floor like this. They'd never once let silence do the teaching. Noah smiled, turning his face toward the doorway. "Daddy's here," he said. Elias froze. He hadn't made a sound. Maribel didn't look up. She kept humming and said, "He hears you. He always has." Elias pushed the door open, louder than he meant. "What are you doing with my son?" he asked. Maribel lifted her head. Her eyes held no fear. "Helping him find the room," she said. "The way God already taught him." Elias stepped inside. The playroom smelled of lemon polish and new toys nobody touched. His cameras watched every corner, but they hadn't warned him about humming. Maribel stood slowly, palms open, like she knew the danger wasn't her. It was his fear. "We have rules," Elias said. "Specialist schedules. You don't improvise with him." "Noah isn't a schedule," she answered. Noah sat still, head tilted, listening to the tension like it had a sound. Maribel crouched beside him. "Baby, tell your daddy what we were doing." Noah turned toward Elias's voice. "She's teaching me the house," he said. "So I don't have to be scared." Elias's throat tightened. "You don't touch him without permission," he said, and hated how weak it sounded. Maribel nodded once. "I hear you." Her voice softened. "Back in Savannah, my grandmother used to say, God don't always move the mountain. Sometimes he teaches your feet." Elias flinched. It sounded like his wife before grief turned him cold. "Where did you learn that rhythm?" he asked. Maribel's jaw set. "From living," she said. "And from praying when nobody else could fix it." Noah lifted his hands, searching the air, then whispered, "Mama used to hum like that." Elias went still because nobody in this house said "Mama" anymore. Maribel's eyes flicked to the ceiling camera, and Elias realized she knew where he was watching. Have you ever had a moment where someone said or did something so small, but it stirred up something you thought you'd buried for good? Elias didn't ask for answers that night. He just stood there, realizing that fear, grief, and faith had been sharing the same room all along. If you've ever loved someone deeply but didn't know how to protect them, or if you've ever felt like God was speaking quietly while life stayed loud, take a moment and tell us in the comments. What would you have done if you were standing in Elias's place? Elias didn't speak for a long moment. He just watched Noah's hands float in the air like he was feeling a breeze nobody else could see. The boy's face stayed calm, but Elias knew that calm was hard-won. Noah lived in a world built of sounds and guesses, and Elias had spent years trying to pad every sharp edge. Maribel sat back down on the rug like she belonged there. "Noah," she said softly, "where's your daddy standing?" Noah turned his head, not toward Elias's face, but toward the exact spot where his shoes met the hardwood. "2 steps inside," Noah said. "By the shelf with the trucks." Elias's stomach dipped. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. Maribel nodded. "How do you know?" Noah smiled a little. His watch ticks different than mine. Elias instinctively covered his wrist, like hiding it would change the truth. The watch had been a gift from his wife, one of the few things he still wore. He never thought the sound mattered. Maribel reached for a small rubber ball and rolled it across the floor. It tapped the baseboard, then softly bumped a toy chest. "Tell me what you hear," she said. Noah's brow furrowed with focus. "Wall," he whispered. Then, "the box. And the rug is closer." Elias felt something shift inside him, half awe, half fear. The boy wasn't lost in darkness. He was learning a map. Maribel looked up at Elias. "He can feel the room, Mr. Crown. You just have to stop panicking long enough to let him." Elias swallowed. "And if he gets hurt?" Maribel's voice stayed steady. "Then we pray. And we try again." That night, long after Noah fell asleep, Elias sat alone in the security room behind his office. The walls were lined with monitors, hallways, patios, the garage, the kitchen, the playroom. He told himself it was protection. But the truth was uglier. Was control. He rewound the playroom footage and watched Maribel again, frame by frame. Her fingers didn't move randomly. Every tap had a pause. Every pause invited Noah to answer. She wasn't entertaining him. She was building something. Elias pulled up older clips. Therapists with bright charts, nannies with forced smiles, people speaking loud and slow like Noah was fragile glass. In every recording, Noah's shoulders stayed tense. His hands stayed clenched. His face stayed somewhere far away. Then he clicked back to Maribel. Noah leaned toward her, humming like it was warmth. His fingers opened. His breathing slowed. In the corner of the screen, Elias noticed something else. Maribel's head tilted slightly as if she was listening for a sound he couldn't hear. Elias zoomed in. Her left eye didn't track the same way as her right. It was subtle, an almost invisible delay, like a curtain half drawn. His pulse picked up. He fast-forwarded to when she stood, and for a split second she turned her face toward the window. The moonlight hit her profile, and Elias caught it clearly. A faint scar near her brow, the kind that didn't come from makeup. Elias leaned closer to the monitor, suddenly uneasy. Maribel had been hired through an agency. Clean background check. No red flags. So why did she move like someone trained by hardship? And why, when she glanced up, did it look like she knew he was watching even without looking straight at the camera? Elias slept on the couch that night, the monitors muted, the house too quiet. Near dawn, a sound pulled him awake. A small voice, thin but certain, drifting from Noah's room. "Mama?" Elias held his breath. He didn't move. The word pressed on his chest like a hand. Through the open door, Noah lay on his side, fingers tapping the mattress in a slow pattern. Tap, pause, tap. The same rhythm Maribel used. "She hums when she's close," Noah whispered. "She smells like rain." Elias stepped into the doorway. "Buddy," he said carefully. "Who are you talking to?" Noah turned his face toward him. "Mama," he said again. "She says God's still here." Elias's knees weakened. His wife had died during childbirth in a hospital outside Pasadena. Noah had never seen her. Never heard recordings. Elias had buried every reminder in locked boxes in silence. "Noah," Elias said, voice cracking, "Mama isn't here." Noah frowned, then tilted his head. "She is when it's quiet," he said. "She tells Maribel things." Elias felt the room spin. Maribel. The name landed heavy. The tapping stopped. Noah's hands curled into fists. "Don't send her away," he murmured. "God sent her when you stopped listening." Elias backed out of the room, heart pounding. In the dark hallway, one thought wouldn't let him go. How did his son know what his mother used to say? The question echoed unanswered as morning crept closer slowly inside. Maribel didn't deny it when Elias asked the next day. She just closed the patio door and sat across from him at the kitchen table. "I don't see the way you do," she said, touching the corner of her left eye. "Haven't since I was 8. Elias watched her carefully. In daylight the difference was clearer. One eye followed him. The other listened. "A car," Maribel continued. "Wrong place. Wrong prayer." She smiled faintly. "But God left me enough." Elias said nothing. "I learned early," she went on, "that sight isn't the only way to know where you are." She tapped the table twice, paused, then once. "Sound fills gaps. Faith does too." Elias exhaled. "Why, my son?" Maribel met his gaze, unafraid. "Because he's not broken," she said. "And because you're scared of what he might become." The words stung because they were true. She leaned forward. "Your wife used to pray out loud," Maribel added softly. "She said God trusted you with a child who'd teach you patience." Elias's throat tightened. "You knew her?" Maribel nodded. "In Georgia. Before money. Before silence." Outside Noah laughed, free, unguarded. Elias realized something then, sharp and terrifying. Maribel wasn't teaching his son how to live blind. She was teaching him how to live unafraid. He felt the ground shift beneath years of certainty. Control loosened its grip. For the first time, Elias wondered if blindness had saved his son from becoming like him. Rich in power, poor in trust, deaf to God's quiet instructions that were always meant to lead them home. Elias stood alone in the study after Maribel left the kitchen. The walls were lined with awards, framed magazine covers, photos taken at fundraisers where he smiled like a man who believed in outcomes. None of it could quiet the echo in his chest. He reached for the bottom drawer of his desk and stopped himself. That was where he kept the things he didn't open anymore. Old church programs, a folded prayer card, his wife's handwriting fading at the edges. He hadn't prayed since the hospital. Not the kind of prayer that asks, only the kind that accuses. Outside, Noah's laughter drifted through the open window. It sounded different lately. Lighter. Like it didn't need permission. Elias sat down and pressed his palms flat on the desk. "If you're there," he said quietly, feeling foolish the second the words left his mouth. "I don't know how to do this." No thunder answered. No sign. Just the hum of the house settling and the distant sound of Maribel singing to herself. He remembered something his wife used to say after Sunday service in Atlanta. "God ain't loud, Eli. We are." Elias bowed his head. His voice cracked before he finished the thought. "I'm afraid," he admitted, "and I don't know how to trust you with my son." The words hung in the air, unanswered, but for the first time in years, Elias didn't feel mocked by the silence. He felt listened to. Maribel laid out the lesson like it was nothing special. No charts. No raised voices. Just the living room cleared of furniture and a few everyday sounds. "Noah," she said, "stand right here." He did, barefoot on the hardwood, toes curling slightly. Maribel snapped her fingers once near the wall. "What's that?" "Close," Noah said. "Hard." She clapped softly toward the couch. "And that?" "Farther." "Soft edge." Elias watched from the doorway, hands clenched in his pockets. Every instinct told him to stop it. To catch Noah before he stumbled. To protect him from the floor, the space, the risk. Maribel rolled a wooden spoon across the room. It rattled, then stopped. Noah turned toward the sound, took one step. Then another. Elias's heart slammed. "Maribel." She raised one finger without looking at him. Noah paused, listening. The house felt suspended, like it was holding its breath with him. Then Noah walked again, slow but certain, and bent to pick up the spoon. I felt it, he said proudly. The room moved back. Elias swallowed hard. His son was smiling not because he'd been helped, but because he'd done it himself. Maribel crouched beside Noah. You see, she said gently, God already gave you what you need. Noah nodded. Daddy's scared, he said matter of fact. Elias laughed once, sharp and wet. Yeah, he admitted. Daddy is. Maribel finally looked up at him. Then maybe, she said softly, this is God teaching you how to walk. Elias didn't argue. He couldn't. For the first time he saw the room the way Noah did, not as danger but as possibility shaped by faith, sound, and courage. The first complaint came from the neighbor across the street. Then another from 2 houses down. By the third voicemail, Elias stopped pretending it was coincidence. There's music late at night, the woman said, irritation sharpened by concern. Not loud, just constant. It's unsettling. Elias replayed the message twice, then checked the timestamps. Always after 10. Always from his address. That night he stayed awake, lights off, sitting at the edge of his bed. At exactly 10:30, the sound drifted up through the floorboards. A low melody. Wordless. Steady. Maribel's humming. Elias moved through the hallway, pulse quickening. The sound wasn't coming from Noah's room. It was moving. From the kitchen to the living room. Then the stairs. His stomach tightened. He checked the cameras on his phone. The living room feed lagged, then refreshed. The room was empty. The humming continued. Maribel? Elias called, keeping his voice calm. No answer. The melody shifted slightly, almost like a response. Elias's hand brushed the wall as he followed it, suddenly aware of how dark the house was without the lights on. The humming stopped. Silence pressed in, thick and uncomfortable. Then he heard Noah's voice, clear and close. I'm here, Daddy. Elias rushed forward, heart racing. The living room light flicked on. Noah stood alone in the center of the room, barefoot, smiling, hands relaxed at his sides. Elias froze, fear and awe colliding in his chest. How did you get here? He whispered. Noah tilted his head. I followed the sound. Elias crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees in front of Noah. He checked his arms, his legs, his face, looking for bruises that weren't there, for proof that this was a mistake waiting to happen. I told you not to move around alone at night, Elias said, trying to keep his voice steady. Noah didn't flinch. He just reached out and touched Elias's cheek, fingers warm and sure. You were scared, Noah said. Elias laughed under his breath. Yeah, I was. Maribel appeared in the doorway then, calm as ever, the hallway light framing her like she'd stepped out of a different world. He asked to try, she said quietly. I stayed close. Elias looked at her. From where? Maribel pointed to the shadow near the stairs. Right there. Elias exhaled, long and shaky. His anger drained out, leaving something softer behind. Noah turned toward the kitchen. She hums where the walls bend, he said. It shows me where I am. Elias closed his eyes. For years he'd measured progress in inches and reports. Tonight, his son had crossed a room guided by trust. You did good, Elias said. Noah grinned. God helped. The words landed gently, not like accusation, not like hope, but like fact. Elias stood slowly. He looked at the living room, the furniture, the space he'd tried to control into safety. It had never been the room that trapped his son. It had been his fear. Maribel met his gaze. This isn't the miracle people expect, she said. But it's the one you're being given. Elias nodded once. As Noah walked back toward his room, guided only by a soft hum and faith he didn't know how to explain, Elias stayed where he was, watching, learning, and realizing that something sacred had already begun quietly inside his own house. The words stayed with Elias long after the house went quiet again. God helped. He sat at the kitchen island near midnight, a cold cup of coffee untouched in front of him. The ocean outside Malibu was invisible, but he could hear it breathing against the shore. For years that sound had comforted him. Tonight it felt like a reminder, steady, patient, unmoved by his control. From Noah's room came a faint hum. Not Maribel's. Noah's. Elias held still. The melody wasn't perfect. It wandered, slowed, then found itself again. Elias felt his chest tighten as memory rose uninvited. His wife used to hum like that when she folded laundry, when she brushed her teeth, when she prayed under her breath before bed. Noah's voice followed the tune, soft and certain. God don't leave when it hurts, he whispered. Mama said he stays closer. Elias's breath caught. He stood and walked to the doorway, leaning against the frame like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. Noah lay curled on his side, hands tapping lightly on the mattress. Who told you that? Elias asked quietly. Noah smiled without opening his eyes. Mama. And Maribel. Elias swallowed hard. When you're not listening, Noah said simply. Elias stepped back, heart pounding. He hadn't told Maribel those words. He hadn't told anyone. Back in the kitchen, Elias opened the bottom drawer of his desk for the first time in years. Inside lay his wife's old Bible, a folded prayer card tucked between the pages. He didn't read it. He just held it, realizing the house had started speaking again, and somehow his son had been hearing it all along. The next afternoon, Elias drove without a destination in mind. The Pacific Coast Highway curved ahead of him, sunlight flashing off the water, but his thoughts were thousands of miles away. Georgia. He pulled into a quiet overlook in Santa Monica and called Maribel. When she answered, her voice was calm, like she'd been expecting it. You knew my wife, Elias said. Not a question. Yes, Maribel replied. Before she moved west. Before life got heavy. They sat across from each other later that evening, the dining room table bare between them. It was a small church outside Savannah, Maribel said. Basement floor. Folding chairs. No choir robes. Just voices. Elias closed his eyes. He could see it. He'd been there once. Long before investors and boardrooms. She prayed loud, Maribel continued, smiling softly. For a child. For patience. For a husband who wouldn't try to carry everything alone. Elias's jaw tightened. She used to say, Maribel went on, if God gives us a child who walks a harder road, it's because we're meant to learn how to walk slower. Elias felt tears burn behind his eyes. She prayed for you, Maribel said. Said you'd forget how to listen once money got loud. Silence filled the room. Why didn't you tell me? Elias asked. Maribel met his gaze. Because you weren't ready to hear it yet. Outside, Noah laughed as he navigated the patio, guided by sound and memory. Elias listened, really listened, and realized something painful and holy at once. His wife's prayers hadn't gone unanswered. They'd just arrived in a form he never expected, and at exactly the moment he was finally quiet enough to receive them. That night, Elias didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed until the room lost its shape, the dark pressing in without feeling threatening for the first time. The house hummed softly, pipes settling, the distant ocean, Noah's careful footsteps as he moved from room to room, testing his map. Elias followed the sound and stopped outside the hallway bathroom. Noah stood at the sink alone, hands resting on the counter, listening to the drip of the faucet. I didn't wake you, Elias said quietly. I know, Noah replied. Your steps are slower when you're sad. The truth of it hit Elias harder than accusation ever could. He leaned against the wall and slid down until he was sitting on the cool tile. I broke something, Elias said. A long time ago. Noah turned his face toward him. Mama says broken things still work. Just different. Elias covered his mouth, shoulders shaking. He hadn't cried like this since the hospital, since the moment he chose silence over grief because it hurt less. I didn't know how to be your dad, he whispered. Noah stepped closer and placed a small hand on Elias's knee. You're learning, he said. Maribel says grown-ups forget that learning takes falling. Elias nodded, tears dropping onto the floor. For the first time he didn't feel judged by God or haunted by loss. He felt invited. And somewhere between the drip of water and his son's steady breathing, Elias let himself grieve properly, loud, honest, and finally unafraid. The doctors came back the following week. They filled the living room with polished shoes, measured words, and cautious smiles. Charts were reviewed. Tests repeated. Conclusions unchanged. No improvement in visual function, the lead specialist said gently. What you're seeing is adaptation, not restoration. Elias nodded. For once the words didn't sting. Noah sat on the rug, listening, fingers tracing the grain of the hardwood. When the doctors left, he looked up. They don't hear the house, he said. Maribel smiled. Elias did too. Later that afternoon, Elias watched Noah move through the kitchen, avoiding chairs, reaching the counter without help. It wasn't sight. It was confidence. That evening, Elias canceled 2 board meetings and ignored a dozen emails. He sat on the floor with Noah while Maribel hummed softly nearby. I used to pray for a miracle, Elias admitted. Something big. Loud. Noah leaned into him. Mama says God likes small miracles. The kind you have to pay attention to. Elias kissed the top of his son's head, breathing him in. For years, Elias had begged God to change his son. Now he understood the truth that had been waiting patiently all along. God had been changing him instead. And this time, Elias wasn't afraid of the transformation. The email came from the hospital before sunrise. A new research program. Experimental tools. A chance, they said, to push the limits of what science could do. Elias stared at the screen longer than he needed to. Months ago he would have replied within seconds, already imagining headlines and hope wrapped in certainty. He closed the laptop instead. At breakfast, Noah traced the rim of his bowl and smiled. You're thinking loud again, he said. Elias laughed softly. Am I that obvious? Yes, Noah replied. Your breath changes. Elias hesitated, then told him about the doctors. The machines. The possibility of more tests. Noah listened without interrupting. Do I have to? He asked finally. The question landed heavier than any diagnosis. Elias knelt beside him. No, he said, surprising himself with how sure he sounded. Not unless you want to. Noah nodded. I like how I see now. From the doorway Maribel watched, saying nothing. That afternoon, Elias drafted a careful response to the hospital. Grateful. Respectful. Declining for now. His finger hovered over send. He thought of Noah standing in the living room, smiling in the dark. Of a house that had learned to speak differently. Of God working quietly without permission slips or press releases. Elias hit send. For the first time he chose peace over possibility. That evening, Elias found Maribel on the back patio, palms resting on the railing, face turned toward the ocean breeze. Did God send you here? He asked. Maribel didn't answer right away. She listened, to the waves, to the wind, to the house behind them. I don't believe God sends people like packages, she said finally. I believe he nudges. Elias nodded. And if I'd kept my walls up? Maribel smiled faintly. Then I'd have kept humming. Some doors opened slow. Elias leaned beside her. My wife believed God spoke through people. She was right, Maribel said. But only if we let them speak. Elias exhaled. I've spent years paying to be heard. Maribel turned to him then. And now? Elias watched Noah through the glass door, moving confidently through the room. Now I'm learning how to listen. Maribel nodded once. That's usually when the lesson sticks. For the first time since the hospital room years ago, Elias felt no urge to control the outcome. He trusted the process. On Sunday morning, Maribel asked if they could pray. Not in a church. Not formally. Just in the living room. Elias hesitated, then nodded. They sat on the rug, Noah between them, hands resting on their knees. The house was quiet, expectant. Maribel spoke softly. Lord, thank you for rooms that teach us courage. Noah added, and for sounds that help us not be scared. Elias swallowed. When it was his turn, the words came unpolished. Thank you for staying, he said. Even when I didn't. The prayer ended without ceremony. After, Maribel reached into her pocket and unfolded a worn slip of paper. Your wife gave me this once, she said. Asked me to keep it. Elias's hands trembled as he read the familiar handwriting. If our child walks in darkness, teach us not to rush ahead of him. Elias pressed the paper to his chest, breath breaking. The prayer had been answered. Noah led the way through the house that night. Follow me, he said proudly. Elias did, one careful step at a time. Noah stopped near the stairs. This is where the echo changes, he explained. It means space. Elias closed his eyes, listening, not with fear but curiosity. You're teaching me, Elias said. Noah grinned. That's what kids do. Maribel watched from a distance, hands folded, like her work was already done. Elias realized then that leadership didn't always come from sight. Sometimes it came from trust. Later, alone in the living room, Elias knelt. Not out of habit. Not out of desperation. Out of gratitude. I see it now, he whispered. Not with my eyes. He didn't ask for sight, or success, or control. He asked for steadiness. When he stood, the house felt different. Lighter. Like it had forgiven him. Months later, guests filled the house. Friends, family, laughter. Noah moved through it all with ease, greeting voices, finding his way. Elias watched, pride steady in his chest. Maribel hummed softly from the kitchen, the same tune that started everything. Elias joined her. He didn't need cameras anymore. God had already shown him where to look. And this time he was truly seeing. Stories like this aren't really about miracles we can see. They're about the quiet ones. Faith that grows slowly, love that learns, and moments that change us without making a sound. If this story touched something in you, take a second to let us know by tapping like. If you believe stories can still heal, teach, and remind us what matters, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. And if there's a moment in your own life where you had to learn to listen instead of control, share it in the comments. Someone reading might need that reminder today. Thank you for being here.